So if you're not going to put coral in this tank, I'll probably be running at about 0.020 because I like a lower salinity because the corals, I've got no corals to worry about, and the pathogens tend to hate the fresher water. If I'm going to run corals, I'll tend to run a slightly higher salinity, more like 0.024, or specific gravity, I should say, 0.025. But what we got to be aware of is fish cannot handle going up in salinity. You can only go up a degree or two per day, and any amount of climatization is not going to cut it. But they can go down, no problem. So if you had this tank and you did not have a quarantine tank, then what I'd be recommending we do is lower the salinity, introduce some fish, wait a month, make sure those fish are perfect. Then you could add some more fish, then wait a month, then add some more fish, then wait a month. Now, if you've got corals in there, you'll find that the corals don't mind lowering the salinity just a little bit, some more than others. But if you lowered it and then over the next few days slowly raise it again, then usually you'll find your corals are okay. In a perfect world, you could get your fish all established before you add the corals. But what we're not wanting to do is break the 1 month rule. So we're not wanting to add fish and then within a month add more. Because when the fish are stressed and they don't have a good immune system, then all the various pathogens within the fish will have a life cycle, including a dinoflagellate phase where the parasites will drop off the fish, they'll reduplicate and they'll come back looking for a new host. Now, that happens over a period of days or weeks, depending on the conditions. The UV sterilizer, if the flow is very slow through it, can help to protect the fish against dinoflagellates a little bit. That's a good step. And so we put the fish in, we wait a full month, we let the pathogens settle down, then we can think about putting more in. And we don't want to put the fish into higher salinity. It's very common for the industry to run very low salinity, sort of 0.017, and then the retail tends to run about 2.0. So what you don't want to do is go and buy the fish and chuck it straight into 0.024, 0.026, whatever you're running yours, because they can't handle going up that much. And considering that a few days ago, that same fish could have been in a wholesaler somewhere sitting at 1.7. And then if you destroy the osmoregulation of the fish, then it will take a week or two and then it will just seem to die. Because the osmoregulation system will work and work and work until it runs out of energy, and then the fish will usually just die or end up with some sort of disease. So just be aware that fish cannot handle going up in salinity. They can handle going down. And that's why pre-quarantining fish is the go. And if you can't pre-quarantine the fish, then consider just dropping the salinity a little bit for a few days while you introduce the new fish. But corals like the higher salinity, and then I'd prefer the lower salinity for the fish. And just be aware that over time, as the water evaporates, the salt level will inevitably go up. So we do need to be adding RO water to make sure that we're not getting an increased salinity over time. Now, if over time this became a well-populated reef tank, then we start to need to be interested in micro and trace elements. Now, if you don't have many coral in this tank, then what I'm about to say is pretty well irrelevant. But if you start getting a lot of coral, then the demand for various nutrients, vitamins, and so forth become very high. So you're not going to be able to balance micro-dosing of anything. So what you end up doing is you get yourself a dosing pump. So you can mount it anywhere under here. And then you're going to get a few bottles, generally one that's got calcium, one that's got magnesium, one that's got carbonate, and then one that's probably got like a trace element mix. And then you might even think about like a organic carbon product for nitrate phosphate. So you hook it up. So then what this dosing pump's going to do is pick up water out of the bottle and then put it into the sump. And then what's going to happen is over a period of months, you're going to tweak this dosing pump by turning it up or a bit down to make very small adjustments to make sure that your calcium, pH, magnesium, and your trace elements are always correct. So you're going to need to dose them on a daily basis to make sure that your input and your output become stabilized. So what I'm saying is, over time, once the water's right and once we've got live coral in there, the coral will have a very high demand on calcium, carbonate, magnesium, and you'll be surprised how much it sucks it out of the water, because it sucks out the calcium, carbonate, magnesium to form part of the physical structure. So therefore that needs to be replaced. Now, what you don't want to do is rely on you. Otherwise, you need to be adding a certain amount, preferably once a day, at worst once a week, and that will cause a spike. Whereas if you just have a dosing pump and you slowly adjust it, then you'll find it'll take a few months to get it tuned to make sure the levels are always correct. But then when you're busy, it's still going to be correct. Otherwise, what tends to happen is you go through a few months where you're manually doing it and you get all your levels right and it all starts to look really good. But then you get busy and you get distracted and then you're not doing what you were doing, and then eventually it just all goes to crap again. So you really want to have a dosing pump and let the dosing pump create the consistency that it's unlikely you will be able to. Back in the old days, there was a high value placed on water change systems, and these water change systems would automatically suck a certain amount of water out of the tank. Then you would have things like water change tanks for pumping the water back in again, and you could create quite a really basic system for changing the water. And for commercial aquariums that are way overstocked with fish, they can actually be quite beneficial. For a standard aquarium with a standard amount of fish, the value in those water change systems, I would suggest, is near zero. Because if you are going to remove 20 litres of water and you use a gravel cleaner, the amount of organic crap that you pull out of your gravel is intense. Your bucket will often be black or brown with crap, and then you're throwing all that crap out, and then you're putting 20 litres of fresh water back in, and that will make a remarkable amount of impact over a long period of time, as opposed to taking nice clean water off the top and just putting slightly cleaner water back in again. I'm looking for bang for buck in everything I do. So I want to gravel clean and get out maximum crap before I put the water back in, because that's going to have the biggest impact on how the aquarium runs.